Hey,
and all
Charles, how
making
you
a good
doing?
deal of noise, but she lowered her voice even so. Aes Sedai can do that sort of thing, I've heard. My husband, no one knows more than I that your Aes Sedai will find it hard tonight to recommend you dance their puppet. Much harder than a man who's just the dragon reborn. But when you walked in here, I was more afraid than at any time since you left. Amusement trickled through in the first of that, like tiny bubbles in his nose, and warm fondness and love, the smell of her clear and pure and strong. But all of those faded by the end, leaving that thin trembling thread. Like Fail, it's true. Every word Rand said. You heard Dobrain and Aram? She smiled and nodded and worked
Hell
her
yeah,
fan.
Charles, that's good.
That thread still quivered in his nostrils, though. Blood and ashes, what does it take to convince her? Would it help if he had Varen dance the Sasara? She will, if he tells her to. He meant it for a joke. All he knew of the Sasara was that it was scandalous, and that Fail had once admitted knowing how to dance it, though recently she sidestepped and all but denied it. He meant it for a joke, but she closed her fan and tapped it on her wrist. He knew that one. I am giving your suggestion serious thought. I don't know what would be enough, Perrin. She shivered slightly. Is there anything an Aes Sedai would not do or put up with if the White Tower told her to? I have studied my history, and I was taught to read between the lines. Mashera Donavel bore 7 children for a man she loved, whatever the stories say. And Isabai Tobani delivered the brothers she loved to their enemies and the throne of Araduman with them. And Jestian Redhill? She shivered again, not so slightly. It's all right, he murmured, wrapping her in his arms. He had studied several books of history himself, but he had never seen those names. The daughter of a lord received a different education from a blacksmith's apprentice. It really is true. Dobrain averted his eyes, and so did Aram, though with a pleased grin. She resisted at first, but not very hard. He could never be sure when she would avoid a public embrace, and when welcome it. Only that if she did not want one, she made it clear in no uncertain terms, with or without words. This time she snuggled her face into his chest and hugged him back, squeezing harder. If any Aes Sedai ever harms you, she whispered, I will kill her. He believed her. You belong to me, Perrin Tabashir Ebara. To me.
Hey, Fire, how you
He
doing?
believed that, too.
Got
As her hug grew fiercer, so did the
got
thorny
bowl
scent of
loaded.
jealousy. He almost chuckled. It seemed
Got
the right
one
to put a
rolled
knife
up.
in him was reserved to her. He would have chuckled, except that filament of fear remained.
And I got some
That and what she had said about Mare.
reclaim.
He could not smell himself, but he knew what was there.
It
Fear.
was,
Old fear and new fear for the next time. The last of the nobles forced their way from the grand hall without anyone being trampled, sending Aram off to tell Daniel to bring the Two Rivers men into the city, and wondering how he was going to feed them. Perrin offered Fail his arm and led her
it's
out,
reclaim,
leaving
but
Dobrain
it
with
does its job.
Fuller, who was finally showing signs of awakening.
I got
He had
just a
no
little
wish to be
bit of
around when
reclaim
she
here,
woke,
then
and Fail, with her hand on his wrist,
I got
seemed not to either. They walked quickly, eager to reach their rooms, if not necessarily for the same reasons. The nobles apparently had not stopped their flight once they were out of the grand hall. The corridors were empty except for servants who kept their eyes down and moved at a silent rush. But before they had gone very far, Perrin caught the sound of footsteps and realized they were being followed. It seemed unlikely that Colaver had any open supporters still, but if there were any, they might think to strike at Rand through his friend, walking alone with his wife while the Dragon Reborn was elsewhere. Only when Perrin spun about, hand to his axe, he stared instead of drawing the weapon. It was Salanda and her friends from the entry hall, with 8 or 9 new faces. They gave a start when he turned and exchanged abashed glances. Some were Tyrans, including a woman who stood taller than all but one of the Carianan men. She wore a man's coat and tight breeches, just like Solanda and the rest of the women, with a sword on her hip. He had not heard that this nonsense had spread to the Tyrants. "Why are you following us?" he demanded. "If you try to make me any of your woolhead trouble, I vow I'll kick the lot of you from here to Beltane." He had had problems before with these idiots, or some just like them anyway. All they thought about was their honor and fighting duels and taking one another gaishain. That last really set the Aiel's teeth on edge. "Attend my husband and obey," Aiel put in sharply. "He is not a man to be trifled with." Gawking stares vanished, and they backed away, bowing, competing over flourishes. They were still at it when they vanished around a turn. "Bloody young buffoons," Perrin muttered, offering Aiel his wrist again. "My husband is wise in his years," she murmured. Her tone was utterly serious. Her smell was something else again. Perrin managed not to snort. True, a few of them might be a year or two older than he, but they were all like children with their playing at Aiel. Now, with Aiel in a good mood, seemed as good a time as any to begin what they had to talk about. What he had to talk about. "Aiel, how did you come to be one of Colaver's attendants?" "The servants, Perrin." She spoke softly. Nobody 2 steps away could have heard a word. She knew all about his hearing and the wolves. That was nothing a man could keep from his wife. Her fan touched her ear, admonishing caution in speech. "Too many people forget servants are there, but servants listen too. In Carian, they listen far too much." None of the liveried people he saw were doing any listening. The few who did not duck down side corridors when they saw him and Aiel went by at a near run, gazes on the floor, and gathered in on themselves. Any sort of news spread quickly in Carian. Events in the Grand Hall would have flown. The word was in the streets by now, probably on its way out of the city already. Without any doubt, there were eyes and ears in Carian for the Aes Sedai and the White Cloak, and likely more thrones than not. In that hushed voice, she went on to speak a caution to him. "Colaver can't be fast enough to take me in, once she learned who I am. My father's name impressed her as much as my cousin's." She finished with a little nod, as if she had answered everything. It was a good answer. Almost. Her father was Davram, high seat of House Bashir, Lord of Bashir, Tyre, and Sedona, guardian of the Blight Border, defender of the Heartland, and Marshal General to Queen Tenobia of Saldaea. Aiel's cousin was Tenobia herself. More than reason for Colaver to leap at Aiel for one of her attendants. But he had had time to mull things over now, and he prided himself that he was becoming used to her ways. Married life taught a man about women, or about one woman anyway. The answer she had not given confirmed something. Aiel had no concept of danger, not where she herself was concerned. He could not speak of it there in the corridor, of course. Whisper how he would. She did not have his ears, and doubtless she would insist every servant within 50 paces was listening. Holding his patience, he walked on with her until they reached the rooms that had been set aside for them, what seemed an age ago now. The lamps had been lit, making shimmers on the dark polished walls, each tall wooden panel carved in concentric rectangles. In the square stone fireplace, the hearth was swept bare and laid with a few pitiful branches of leatherleaf. They were almost green. Aiel went straight to a small table where 2 golden pitchers stood beaded with moisture on a tray. "They have left us blueberry tea, my husband, and wine punch. The wine is from Theron, I think. They cool the punch in the cisterns beneath the palace. Which would you prefer?" Perrin unbuckled his belt and tossed belt and axe on a chair. He had planned out what he had to say very carefully on the way here. She could be a prickly woman. "Aiel, I missed you more than I can say, and worried about you, but worried about me," she snapped, spinning to face him. She stood straight and tall, eyes fierce as those of her falcon namesake, and her fan made a coring motion toward his middle. No part of the language of fans, she made the same gesture with a knife sometimes. When almost the first words from your mouth were to ask after that woman, his jaw dropped. How could he have forgotten the smell filling his nostrils? He nearly put a hand up to see whether his nose was bleeding. Fail. I wanted her thief catchers. That... No, he was not stupid enough to repeat that name. She said she had proof of the poison before I left. You heard her. I just wanted the proof, Fail. It did no good. That spiky stench softened not a whit, and the thin, sour smell of hurt joined it. What under the light had he said to hurt her? Her proof! What I gathered went for nothing, but her proof put Colliver's head on the block, or should have. That was his opening, but she was not about to let him push a word in edgewise. She advanced on him, looking daggers, her fan darting like one. All he could do was back away. Do you know what story that woman put about? Fail almost hissed. A black viper could not have dripped so much venom. Do you? She said the reason you were not here was that you were at a manor not far from the city, where she could visit you.
I've had this for
I told
a
the
minute.
story I
Can't
prepared,
remember where I got
that
it
you were
from.
hunting, and the light knows you spent enough days hunting, but everyone believed I was putting a good face on you and her. Together. Colliver delighted in it. I could believe she only took that Mayenner strumpet as an attendant to throw the two of us together. Fail, Berlin, come lace my gown. Fail, Berlin, come hold the mirror for the hairdresser. Fail, Berlin, come wash my back. So she could amuse herself, waiting for us to claw one another's eyes out. That is what I've had to put up with. For you, you hairy-eared... His back thumped against the wall, and something snapped inside him. He had been frightened spitless for her, terrified, ready to face down Rand or the Dark One himself. And he had done nothing, had never encouraged Berlin, had done everything in his wits to chase the woman away. For which his thanks was this. Gently he took her by the shoulders and lifted her until those big tilted eyes were level with his. You listen to me, he said calmly. He tried to make his voice calm at least.
Real
It came out more of a growl in his throat. How dare you speak to me like that? How dare you? I worried myself near to death for fear you'd been hurt. I love you, and nobody else but you. I want no other woman but you. Do you hear me? Do you? Crushing her to his chest, he held her, wanting to never let her go. Light, he had been so afraid. He shook even now for what might have been. If anything happened to you, I would die for you. I would lie down in your grave and die. You think I don't know how Colliver found out who you are? You made sure she found out. Spying, he had told him once, was a wife's work. Like woman, you could have ended like Mare. Colliver knows you're my wife. My wife. Perrine Barra. Randall Thor's friend. Did it ever occur to you she might be suspicious? She could have... Light for you. She could have... Abruptly, he realized what he was doing. She was making sounds against his chest, but no words he could recognize. He wondered that he did not hear her ribs creaking. Berating himself for an oath, he let her go, arms springing apart, but before he could apologize, her fingers clutched his beard. So you love me, she said softly, very softly, very warmly. She was smiling, too. A woman likes to hear that said the right way. She had dropped the fan, and her free hand drew fingernails down his cheek, not far from hard enough to draw blood. But her throaty laugh held heat, and the smoldering in her eyes was as far from anger as possible. A good thing you didn't say you never looked at another woman, or I would think you had gone blind. He was too stunned for words, too stunned even to gape. Rand understood women. Matt understood women. But Perrin knew he never would. She was always as much kingfisher as falcon, changing direction faster than he could think. Yet this... That thorny scent was gone completely, and in its place was another smell of her he knew well. A smell that was her, pure and strong and clean. Add that to her eyes, and any moment she was going to say something about farm girls at harvest. They were notorious, apparently, Saldean farm girls. As for you lying down on my grave, she went on, if you do, my soul will haunt yours, I promise you. You will mourn me a decent time, and then you'll find yourself another wife. Someone I'd approve of, I hope.
Gives me a chance to...
With a soft laugh,
give me a break.
She stroked his beard. You really aren't fit to take care of yourself, you know. I want your promise. Best not to crack his teeth on that. Say he would not, and this wonderful mood might be swallowed in a firestorm. Quicksilver was not in it, really. Say he would. By the smell of her, every word was the light's pure truth, but he would believe that when horses roosted in trees. He cleared his throat. I need to bathe. I haven't seen soap in I don't know how long. I must smell like an old barn. Leaning against his chest, she drew a deep breath. You smell wonderful. Like you. Her hands moved on his shoulders. I feel as... The door banged open. Perrin, Berlane isn't... I'm sorry. Forgive me. Rand stood shifting his feet, not at all like the Dragon Reborn. There were maidens in the hallway outside. Min put her head around the doorframe, took one look, grinned at Perrin, and ducked back out of sight. Fail stepped away so smoothly, so stately, that one would never have guessed what she had been saying a moment before, or what she had been about to say. There were spots of color in her cheeks, though, bright and hot. So kind of you, my Lord Dragon, she said coolly, to drop in so unexpectedly. I apologize for not hearing your knock. Maybe those blushes were as much anger as embarrassment. It was Rand's turn to blush and scrub a hand through his hair. Berlane isn't in the palace. She's spending the night on that sea folk ship anchored in the river, of all things. Anura didn't tell me till I was nearly to Berlane's apartments. Perrin tried very hard not to wince. Why did he have to keep saying the woman's name? You wanted to talk to me about something else, Rand? He hoped he had not put too much emphasis in that, yet he hoped Rand caught it. He did not look at Fail, but he tested the air gingerly. No jealousy, not yet. A good deal of anger, however. For a moment, Rand stared at him, looked through him, listening to something else. Perrin folded his arms to stop from shuddering. I need to know, Rand said finally. Are you still unwilling to command the army against Ilion? I have to know now. I'm no general, Perrin said raggedly. There would be battles in Ilion. Images flashed in his head. Men all around him, and the axe in his hands spinning, hewing his way through. Always more men, however many he cut down, in endless ranks. And in his heart, a seed growing. He could not face that again. He would not. Besides, I thought I was supposed to stay close to you. That was what Min had said from one of her viewings. Twice Perrin had to be there, or Rand would go down to disaster. Once had been Dumai's Wells, maybe, but there was still another to come. We must all take risks. Rand's voice was very quiet and very hard. Min peered around the doorframe again, looking as if she wanted to come to him, but she glanced at Fail and stayed outside. Rand, the Aes Sedai. A smart man would let this lie, probably. He had never claimed to be particularly smart, though. The wise ones are ready to skin them alive, or near enough. You can't let them be harmed, Rand. In the corridor, Sylvan turned to study him through the doorway. The man he thought he knew laughed, a wheezing sound. "We all have to take risks," he repeated. "I won't let them be hurt, Rand." Cold blue eyes met his gaze. "You won't let it?" "I won't," Perrin told him levelly. He did not flinch from that stare either. "They are prisoners and no threat. They're women."
It wasn't too bad.
"They are Aes Sedai."
Can't complain though.
Rand's voice was so like Aram's back at Demise Wells that it
Me and
nearly
my
took Perrin's
brother
breath
went to our
away.
mom's
"Rand,
for dinner.
I do what I have to
So
do,
it wasn't all
Perrin."
that bad.
For a moment, he was the old Rand, not liking what was happening.
It always sucks is when you start getting
For a moment,
cold.
he looked tired to death. A moment only. Then he was the new Rand again, hard enough to mark steel. "I won't harm any Aes Sedai who doesn't deserve it, Perrin. I can't promise more. Since you don't want the army, I can use you elsewhere. Just as well, really. I wish I could let you rest longer than a day or two, but I can't. There's no time. No time, and we must do what we must. Forgive me for interrupting you." He sketched a bow, one hand on the hilt of his sword. "Aiel." Perrin tried to catch his arm, but he was out of the room, the door closing behind him, before Perrin could move. Rand was not really Rand anymore, it seemed. A day or two. Where in the light did Rand mean him to go, if not to the army gathering down on the plains of Moredo? "My husband," Aiel breathed. "You have the courage of 3 men. And the sense of a child on leading strings. Why is it that as a man's courage goes up, his sense goes down?" Perrin grunted indignantly. He refrained from mentioning women who set themselves to spy on people who had committed murders and almost certainly knew they were spying. Women always talked about how logical they were compared to men, but for himself, he had seen precious little of it. "Well, perhaps I don't really want the answer, even if you know it." Stretching with her arms over her head, she gave a throaty laugh. "Besides, I don't mean to let him spoil the mood. I still feel as forward as a farm girl. Why are you laughing? Stop laughing at me, Perrin Tabashiri Bara. Stop it, I say, you uncouth oaf. If you don't..." The only way to put an end to it was to kiss her. In her arms, he forgot Rand and Aes Sedai and battles. Where Fail was home. Chapter 7. Pitfalls and Tripwires. Rand felt the dragon scepter in his hand, felt every line of the carved dragons against his heron-branded palm, as clearly as if he were running his fingers over them. Yet it seemed someone else's hand. If a blade cut it off, he would feel the pain and keep going. It would be another's pain. He floated in the void, surrounded by emptiness beyond knowing, and Sayadin filled him, trying to grind him to dust beneath steel-shattering cold and heat where stone would flash to flame, carrying the Dark One's taint on its flow, forcing corruption into his bones. Into his soul, he feared sometimes. It did not make him feel so sick to his stomach as it once had. He feared that even more. And larded through that torrent of fire, ice, and filth, life. That was the best word. Sayadin tried to destroy him. Sayadin filled him to overflowing with vitality. It threatened to bury him, and it enticed him. The war for survival, the struggle to avoid being consumed, magnified the joy of pure life. So sweet even with the foulness. What would it be like clean? Beyond imagining. He wanted to draw more. Draw all there was. There lay the deadly seduction. One slip and the ability to channel would be seared out of him forever. One slip and his mind was gone, if he was not simply destroyed on the spot, and maybe everything around him too. It was not madness, focusing on the fight for existence. It was like high-walking blindfolded over a pit full of sharpened stakes, basking in so pure a sense of life that thinking of giving it up was like thinking of a world forever in shades of gray. Not madness. His thoughts whirled through his dance with Saidin, slid across the void. Anura, peering at him with that Aes Sedai gaze. What was Berlane playing at? She had never mentioned an Aes Sedai advisor, and those other Aes Sedai in Kyrian. Where had they come from, and why? The rebels outside the
Was it next
city.
month, October?
What had emboldened them to move? What did they intend now? How could he stop them or use them? He was becoming good at using people. Sometimes he made himself sick. Savannah and the Shido. Ruark already had scouts on the way to Kinslayer's dagger, but at best they could only find out where and when. The wise ones who could find out why would not. There were a lot of whys connected to Savannah.
Oh, shit. That's crazy.
Elaine and Avienda. No, he would not think of them. No thoughts of them. None. Perrin and Fail. A fierce woman, Falcon by name and nature. Had she really attached herself to Kolovet just to gather evidence? She would try to protect Perrin if the Dragon Reborn fell. Protect him from the Dragon Reborn, should she decide it necessary. Her loyalties were to Perrin, but she would decide for herself how to meet them. Fail was no woman to do meekly as her husband told her, if such a woman existed. Golden eyes, staring challenge and defiance. Why was Perrin so vehement about the Aes Sedai? He had been a long time with Karuna and her companions on the road to Dumai's Wells. Would Aes Sedai really do with him what everybody feared? Aes Sedai. He shook his head without being aware. Never again. Never. To trust was to be betrayed. Trust was pain. He tried to push that thought away. It came a little too close to raving. Nobody could live without giving trust somewhere. Not just to Aes Sedai. Matt, Perrin. If he could not trust them, Min. Never a thought of not trusting Min. He wished she were with him instead of snugged in her bed. All those days of prisoner, days of worry, more for him than herself if he knew her. Days of being questioned by Galena and ill-treated when her answers failed to please. Unconsciously, he ground his teeth. All of that, and the strain of being healed on top of it, had caught up with her at last. She had stayed by his side until her legs gave way, and he had to carry her to her bedchamber, with her sleepily protesting all the way that he needed her with him. No Min here. No comforting presence to make him laugh, make him forget the Dragon Reborn. Only the war with Saidin, and the whirlwind of his thoughts, and they must be done away with. You must do it. Don't you remember the last time? That place by the wells was a pittance. Cities burned whole out of the earth were nothing. We destroyed the world. Do you hear me? They have to be killed. Wiped from the face. Not his, that voice shouting inside his skull. Not Randall Thor. Luz Theron Telamon, more than 3,000 years dead, and talking in Randall Thor's head. The power often drew him out of his hiding place in the shadows of Rand's mind. Sometimes Rand wondered how that could be. He was Luz Theron reborn, the Dragon reborn, no denying that. But everybody was someone reborn, 100 someones, 1,000, more. That was how the pattern worked. Everyone died and was reborn again and again as the wheel turned, forever without end. But nobody else talked with who they used to be. Nobody else had voices in their heads, except madmen. What about me? Rand thought. One hand tightened on the dragon scepter, the other on his sword hilt. What about you? How are we different from them? There was only silence. Often enough, Luz Theron did not answer. Maybe it had been better when he never had. Are you real? the voice said at last, wonderingly. That denial of Rand's existence was as usual as refusing to answer. Am I? I spoke to someone. I think I did. Inside a box, a chest. Wheezing laughter, soft. Am I dead or mad or both? No matter. I am surely damned. I am damned, and this is the doom. I am damned. Wild, that laughter. And this is the pit of... Rand moved the voice to an insect's buzz, something he had learned while cramped into that chest. Alone, in the dark. Just him and the pain and the thirst and the voice of a long-dead madman. The voice had been a comfort sometimes, his only companion, his friend. Something flashed in his mind. Not images, just flickers of color and motion. For some reason, they made him think of Matt and Perrin. The flashes had begun inside the chest, them and 1,000 more hallucinations. In the chest, where Galena and Arian and Katarine and the rest stuffed him every day after he was beaten. He shook his head. No. He was not in the chest anymore. His fingers clenched around scepter and hilt. Only memories remained. The memories had no force. He was not. If we must make this journey before you eat, let us make it. The evening meal is long finished for everyone else. Rand blinked, and Sulin stepped back from his stare. Sulin, who would stand eye to eye with a leopard. He smoothed his face, tried to. It felt a mask, somebody else's face. Are you well? She asked. I was thinking. He made his hands unknot, shrugged inside his coat. A better-fitting coat than the one he had worn from Dumai's Wells, dark blue and plain. Even after a bath, he did not feel clean, not with Sayidine in him. Sometimes I think too much. Nearly 20 more maidens clustered at one end of the windowless, dark-paneled room. 8 gilded stand lamps against the walls, mirrored to increase the light, provided illumination. He was glad of that. He did not like dark places anymore. 3 of the Ashaman were there too, the Aiel women to one side of the chamber and the Ashaman to the other. Jonan Adley and Altaran, despite his name, stood with his arms folded, working eyebrows like black caterpillars in deep thought. Perhaps 4 years older than Rand, he was intent on earning the silver sword of the dedicated. Eben Hopwell carried more flesh on his bones and fewer blotches on his face than when Rand had first seen him, though his nose and ears still seemed the biggest part of him. He fingered the sword pin on his collar as if surprised to find it there. Fedwin Moore would have worn the sword as well, had he not been in a green coat suitable for a well-to-do merchant or a minor noble, with a little silver embroidery on cuffs and lapels. Of an age with Eben, but stockier, and with almost no blotches, he did not look happy that his black coat was stuffed into the leather scrip by his feet. They were the ones Luce Theron had been raving about, them and all the rest of the Ashaman. Ashaman, Aes Sedai. Anyone who could channel set him off, often as not. Think too much, Randolph Thor? And Nyla gripped a short spear in one hand and her buckler and 3 more spears in the other. Yet she sounded as if she were shaking a finger at him. The Ashaman frowned at her. Your trouble is you do not think at all. Some of the other maidens laughed softly, but she was not making a joke. Shorter than any other maiden there, by at least a hand, she had hair as fiery as her temper and an odd view of her relationship to him. Her flaxen-haired friend Samara, who stood head and shoulders taller, nodded agreement. She held the same peculiar view. He ignored the comment, but could not stop a sigh. Samara and Anila were the worst, yet none of the maidens could decide whether he was the Kara Karn to be obeyed, or the only child of a maiden ever known to the maidens, to be cared for as a brother, bullied as a son for a few. Even Jelani there, not many years from playing with dolls, seemed to think he was her younger brother, while Corona, graying and nearly as leather-faced as Sulin, treated him like an older. At least they only did that around themselves, not often where other Aiel could hear. When it counted, he would be the Karakan. And he owed it to them. They died for him. He owed them whatever they wanted. "I don't intend to spend all night here while you lot play Kiss the Daisies," he said. Sulin gave him one of those looks. In dresses or in cotton sore, women tossed those looks about like farmers scattering seed. But the Ashaman abandoned staring at the maidens and slung the straps of their scrips over their shoulders. Push them hard, he had told Taim. Make them weapons. And Taim had delivered. A good weapon moved as the man who held it directed. If only he could be sure it would not turn in his hand. He had 3 destinations tonight, but one of those the maidens could not be allowed to know. No one but himself. Which of the other 2 came first, he had decided earlier, yet he hesitated. The journey would be known soon enough, yet there were reasons to keep it secret as he could. When the gateway opened there in the middle of the room, a sweetish smell, familiar to any farmer, drifted through. Horse dung. Wrinkling her nose as she veiled, Sulin led half the maidens through at a trot. After a glance to him, the Ashaman followed, drawing deeply on the true source as they went, as much as they could hold. Because of that, he could feel their strength as they passed him. Without that, it took some effort to tell a man could channel. Longer still, unless he cooperated. None were near as strong as he. Not yet, anyway. There was no saying how strong a man would be until he stopped growing stronger. Fedwin stood highest of the 3, but he had what Taim called a bar. Fedwin did not really believe he could affect anything at a distance with the power. The result was that at 50 paces, his ability began to fade, and at 100, he could not weave even a thread of Saidin. Men gained strength faster than women, it seemed, and a good thing. These 3 were all strong enough to make a gateway of useful size, if just barely in Jonan's case. Every Ashaman was that he had kept. "Kill them before it is too late, before they go mad," Lews Therin whispered. "Kill them. Hunt down Samael and Dimandred and all the Forsaken. I have to kill them all before it is too late." A moment of struggle as he attempted to wrest the power away from Rand and failed. He seemed to try that more often of late, or to seize Saidin on his own. The second was a bigger danger than the first. Rand doubted that Lews Therin could take the true source away once Rand held it. He was not certain he could take it from Lews Therin either, if the other reached it first. "What about me?" Rand thought again. It was nearly a snarl, and no less vicious for falling short. Wrapped in the power as he was, anger spiderwebbed across the outside of the void, a fiery lace. "I can channel too. Madness awaits for me, but it already has you. You killed yourself, Kinslayer, after you murdered your wife and your children, and the light alone knows how many others. I won't kill where I don't have to. Do you hear me, Kinslayer?" Silence answered. He drew a deep, uneven breath. That yellow fire flickered, lightning in the distance. He had never spoken to the man. It was the man, not just a voice. A man, entire with memories. Never spoken to him like that before. Perhaps it might drive Lews Therin away for good. Half the man's mad rantings were tears over his dead wife. Did he want to drive Lews Therin away? His only friend in that chest? He had promised Sulin to count to 100 before following, but he did it by 5s, then stepped more than 150 leagues to Camelin. Night had closed down on the royal palace of Andor, moon shadows cloaking delicate spires and golden domes, but a gentle breeze did nothing to break the heat. The moon hung above, still almost full, giving some light. Veiled maidens scurried around the wagons lined up behind the largest of the palace stables. The odor of the stable muck the wagons hauled away every day had long since soaked into the wood. The Ashaman had hands to their faces, Eben actually pinching his nose shut. The Karakan counts quickly, Sulin muttered, but she lowered her veil. There would be no surprises here. No one would stay near those wagons who did not have to. Rand let the gateway close as soon as the remaining maidens came through, right behind him, and as it winked out of existence, Luce Theron whispered, "She's gone. Almost gone." There was relief in his voice. The bond of Warder and Aes Sedai had not existed in the Age of Legends. Alana was not really gone, no more than she had been any time since bonding Rand against his will, but her presence had lessened, and it was the lessening that made Rand truly aware. You could become used to anything, begin taking it for granted. Near to her, he walked around with her emotions nestled in the back of his head, her physical condition as well, if he thought about it. And he knew exactly where she was as well as he knew his own hand's place. But just as with his hand, unless he thought about it, it just was. Only distance had any effect, but he could still feel that she was somewhere east of him. He wanted to be aware of her. Should Luce Theron fall silent and all the memories of the chest somehow be wiped from his head, he would still have the bond to remind him, never trust Aes Sedai. Abruptly, he realized that Jonan and Eben still held Saidin too. "Release," he said sharply. That was the command Taim used, and he felt the power vanish from them. Good weapons. So far. "Kill them before it's too late," Luce Theron murmured. Rand released the source deliberately and reluctantly. He always hated letting go of the life, the enhanced senses, of the struggle. Inside, though, he was tense, a jumper ready to leap, ready to seize it once more. He always was, now. "I have to kill them," Luce Theron whispered. Shoving the voice back, Rand sent one of the maidens, Miralia, a square-faced woman, into the palace and began pacing alongside the wagons, thoughts spinning again, faster than before. He should not have come here. He should have sent Fedwin with a letter. Spinning. Elaine, Avienda, Perrin, Fail, Anura, Berelaine, Matt. Light, he should not have come. Elaine and Avienda, Anura and Berelaine, Fail and Perrin and Matt. Flashes of color, quick motion just out of sight. A madman muttering angrily in the distance. Slowly he became aware of the maidens talking among themselves. About the smell, implying that it came from the Ashaman. They wanted to be heard, or they would have been using hand talk. There was moonlight enough for that. Moonlight enough to see the color in Eben's face, too, and how Fedwin's jaw was set. Maybe they were not boys any longer, not since Dumai's Wells, certainly. But they were still only 15 or 16. Jonan's eyebrows had drawn down so far they seemed to be sitting on his cheeks. At least nobody had seized Saidin again. Yet. He started to step over to the three men, then raised his voice instead. Let them all hear. "If I can put up with foolishness from maidens, so can you." If anything, the color in Eben's face deepened. Jonan grunted. All three saluted Rand with fist to chest. Then they turned to one another. Jonan said something in a low voice, glancing at the maidens, and Fedwin and Eben laughed. The first time they saw maidens, they had stumbled between wanting to goggle at these exotic creatures they had only read about, and wanting to run before the murderous Aiel of the stories killed them. Nothing much frightened them anymore. They needed to relearn fear. The maidens stared at Rand and began talking with their hands, sometimes laughing softly. Wary of the Ashaman they might be, yet maidens being maidens, Aiel being Aiel, risk only made taunts more fun. Samara murmured aloud about Avienda settling him down, which earned firm nods of approval. Nobody's life was ever this tangled in the stories. As soon as Nerlia returned, saying that she had found Davram Bashir and Bale, the clan chief leading the Aiel here in Camelin, Rand took off his sword belt, and so did Fedwin. Jelani produced a large leather bag for the swords and the dragon scepter, holding it as if the swords were poisonous snakes, or perhaps long dead and rotten. though in truth she would not have held it so gingerly in either case. Putting on a hooded cloak that Karana handed him, Rand held his wrists together behind his back, and Sulin bound them with a cord. Tightly, muttering to herself. This is nonsense. Even wetlanders would call it nonsense. He tried not to wince. She was strong, and using every ounce of it. You have run away from us too often, Randolph Thor. You have no care for yourself. She considered him a brother of an age with herself, but irresponsible at times. Farderais Mai carries your honor, and you have no care. Fedwin glowered while his own wrists were tied, though the maiden binding him hardly put out much effort. Watching, Jonan and Eben frowned deeply. They disliked this plan as much as Sulin did, and understood it as little. The Dragon Reborn did not have to explain himself, and the Kara Khan seldom did. No one said anything, though. A weapon did not complain. When Sulin stepped around in front of Rand, she took one look at his face, and her breath caught. They did this to you, she said softly, and reached for her heavy-bladed belt knife. A foot or more of steel, it was almost a short sword, though none but a fool would say that to an Aiel. Pull up the hood, Rand told her roughly. The whole point of this is that no one recognized me before I reached Bale and Bashir. She hesitated, peering into his eyes. I said, pull it up, he growled. Sulin could kill most men with her bare hands, but her fingers were gentle, settling the hood around his face. With a laugh, Jelani snatched the hood down over his eyes. Now you can be sure no one will know you, Randall Thor. You must trust us to guide your feet. Several maidens laughed. Stiffening, he barely stopped short of seizing Saidin. Barely. Luce Theron snarled and gibbered. Rand forced himself to breathe normally. It was not total darkness. He could see moonlight below the edge of the hood. Even so, he stumbled when Sulin and Anila took his arms and led him forward. I thought you were old enough to walk better than that, Anila murmured in mock surprise. Sulin's hand moved. It took him a moment to realize she was stroking his arm. All he could see was what lay just before him, the moonlit flagstones of the stable yard, then stone steps, floors of marble by lamplight, sometimes with a long runner of carpet. He strained his eyes at the movement of shadows, felt for the telltale presence of Saidin, or worse, the prickling that announced a woman holding Saidar. Blind like this, he might not know he was under attack until too late. He could hear the whisper of a few servants' feet as they hurried on nighttime chores, but no one challenged 5 maidens, apparently escorting 2 hooded prisoners. With Bale and Bashir living in the palace and policing Camelin with their men, doubtless stranger sights had been seen in these corridors. It was like walking a maze. But then he had been in one maze or another since leaving Emmons Field, even when he had thought that he walked a clear path. Would I know a clear path if I saw one, he wondered. Have I been at this so long, I'd think it was a trap. There are no clear paths, only pitfalls and tripwires and darkness. Luce Theron's snarl sounded sweaty, desperate. The way Rand felt.